Welcome to the Business Blast podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wagner. This episode is brought to you by Authors Unite. Authors Unite makes the process of becoming a published, best-selling author as simple as sipping your morning cup of coffee. You can learn more about Authors Unite at authorsunite.com. Now, let's jump into the episode. All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Business Blast podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wagner. Today, I have Steve Dolinsky with us. He is the food reporter at ABC 7 Chicago, the co-host and producer of the Feed podcast with Chef Rick Bayless, and the author of Pizza City, USA, 101 Reasons Why Chicago is America's Greatest Pizza Town. So welcome to the show, man.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Grateful to have you here, Steve. We'll jump right into the first one. First question I have for you is, what is the best story from your life that has an underlying valuable message?
Well, the best story probably is I grew up in St. Cloud, Minnesota, which is about an hour north of Minneapolis, in a very religious, kosher home where food was not really about pleasure. It was more about sustenance. And it was a difficult situation because there were only 10 Jewish families in the whole city. And so we were kind of fish out of water there. But it really taught me about adapting to my environment and making the best of a situation and knowing that it's not always going to be sort of smooth sailing, and you really just have to adapt to survive. And I've found myself adapting to situations, the rest of my life.
Mm. And what is the most valuable piece of information we should know that's within your expertise or industry? And I'd love if you could also share with us, about the pizza in Chicago.
Well, yeah, I would say the most valuable piece of information I've had from the last 2.5 years from eating all these pizzas and writing about them has been there is more to Chicago than deep dish. And not just that, but people who come to Chicago think that there's a style called Giordano's. They do stuffed pizza, which has another layer of dough across the top of the deep dish. That is it's created in Chicago, but it's by no means our greatest pizza that we have. It's like a tourist attraction. I always say that deep dish is to Chicago kind of what Times Square is to New York, in that it's a special occasion. It's what you do if you're visiting for the weekend, but it's not something everyday people who live in the city do. So the answer to that for pizza-wise is tavern-style pies, which are really what Chicagoans eat every day. Square cut, thin and crispy, sauce and cheese pushed all the way to the edge. Usually bulk sausage that's pinched and pressed onto the pie with garnishes like jardiniere, which is kind of a spicy relish that we put on our Italian beef sandwiches, but we also put them on our pizzas.
Yeah, okay.
Tavern style is really the Chicago style, I think, in the book.
Got it. Okay. Next time I'm there, I'll have to try that. I always go deep dish, so that's what we were talking about before we hopped on. So I got to try that too. And then what is your best piece of overall business advice? So not necessarily industry specific.
I think you got to be flexible. I really do. There's no way that you can count on things going your way. And, my wife and I launched this pizza tour business a few months ago, and we do tours every weekend. And I just felt like, going into it, I had a really firm idea of what to expect. And of course, life gets in the way, and, you have to deal with customers and customer relations and other vendors. And I just think you've got to be flexible. You've got to build in, a cushion for a budget. You've got to build in cushion for your time. It's never really going to go as smoothly as you plan.
And if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be?
I think to be patient. I was very impatient when I started off in TV. I was 22, right out of college, and I wanted to be in a big market right away. And looking back, I realized that wouldn't have been possible, and nor would it have been a good idea, because I just didn't know enough. I hadn't lived enough. I hadn't, gotten married, had a mortgage, had kids, and you kind of need to go through all those things to become an expert in life. And I just think I would have told my 22-year-old self to be patient. And the opportunities will come, I think, as long as you work really hard and are always improving and always learning and always doing a little bit better each day.
And kind of going down a little bit of a different path, but in your opinion, what is the key to happiness?
I think that, my key has just been balance. Figuring out, how to balance the rigors of a couple different jobs, because I've got 2 or 3 part-time jobs, and I've got a main job at ABC7, and I've got the TV or the pizza tours and some consulting. And I think just finding that balance. Otherwise, if I spend too much time doing one thing, I just get overwhelmed and I can't quite see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I think having balance in your life, family time, spouse time, away time, getting away from all that, and then work time. I mean, really figuring out how to put them into individual silos, and then not spending too much of your energy on one of those, but really trying to spread it out.
And what is the best book that you've read, and what was the number one thing you learned from that?
Well, I got to have a book with a Chicago connection, of course, and I'm going to say Devil in the White City, which is an interesting choice. It's not a typical business success story. It's historical fiction, but it talks about the Columbian Exposition, the World's Fair of 1893 in Chicago, and what went into that, and how it was less than 20 years after the Great Fire. And the lesson was really how Daniel Burnham, our great architect who really helped build Chicago, surrounded himself with the greatest people and the smartest people. And he got Frederick Law Olmsted, who designed Central Park, to come to Chicago and develop the south side of the city. And really surrounding yourself with good people, they really made lemonade out of a lot of lemons, because the city of Chicago in the 1890s was kind of a dump. It was a slaughterhouse. There were all the meat processing was done here, and the river was disgusting. And they wanted to bring the world here and put it on the world stage. And it really took a lot of effort, but a lot of trusting other people that they would do their job. And so I think delegating.
And what is your favorite quote and why?
I've always loved Briat Savarin's quote, "Tell me what you eat and I will tell you who you are," and that's sort of been morphed into "you are what you eat." But I really think that says a lot about, my friends, my relatives, people I love spending time with. Like they love to eat Korean food and sit down at a table and grill short ribs and drink rice wine and talk about kimchi. And, those are kind of exciting people to me, worldly people who love to try things that are new and interesting and maybe not just so typical. And I just have always lived by those words. I just feel like I've always explored the world through food, and that's been my driving force.
Yeah, man, that is awesome. Thank you again so much for coming on. The last one I have for you before we let you go is, where is the best place for people to find you online?
Probably stevedolinsky.com, and that's DOLINSKY.com, but also pizzacityusa.com. Get the book and come on a tour.
Perfect, man. Thanks again for jumping on.
All right, thank you.
The podcast you just heard was published with Anchor. Got something you want to say to the creator of this show? Send them a voice message using the Anchor app, free for iOS and Android.